Good day everyone. I hope you are doing well today. Welcome to our class. I am Suhaila Masulot and I will be your teacher for today's discussion. For today's lesson, we're going to talk about one of the most influential learning theories in education, which is the Constructivism. But before we officially begin our discussion, let's first look at our learning objectives so we will know what we're expected to accomplish by the end of today's lesson. So please take a few seconds to read the objectives silently. Now, take a few moments to observe these pictures carefully. Have you ever learned how to ride a bicycle? How about learning how to use your mobile phone for the first time? How about learning how to play a new games on your phones? Or the very first time you cook pancit canton? Now, I want you to think about this question. How did you learn these skills? Probably, most of you did not become good at these activities after listening only to one explanations. As you may have noticed, most of these skills were not learned simply by listening to instructions. Instead, you learn them through your own experiences. And this brings us to our lesson today, the Constructivism. So what is Constructivism? Constructivism is a learning theory that states that the learners actively construct or build their own knowledge through their experiences, prior knowledge, and interaction with other people. Yes, in other words, learning is not simply receiving information from someone else. Instead, you build your own understanding. You connect new ideas with what you already know, and you learn through experiences and interaction. Students are not empty containers waiting to be filled with information. Instead, they actively think, explore, and ask questions and connect new knowledge to their previous experience. Remember, class, learning does not happen simply because someone gives you instruction. Real learning happens when you apply what you have learned. In education, no matter how well a teacher explains a lesson, learning will only take place if you are willing to participate and help yourself. You construct your own understanding while your teacher serves as a guide and facilitator throughout the learning process. Now that we already understand what constructivism is, let's explore its two major perspectives. Although both believe that learners actively construct knowledge, they differ in how learning takes place. Let's begin with the first perspective. But before anything else, let me ask you the simple question. Have you ever learned something just by exploring or figuring it out on your own? If your answer is yes, then you have already experienced individual constructivism. Individual constructivism, also known as cognitive constructivism, is based on the theory of Jean Piaget. According to Piaget, learning happens within the individual. Instead of passively receiving information from a teacher, learners actively explore their environment, meaning they observe, ask questions, experiment, and eventually discover ideas through their own experiences. In other words, learners build knowledge by making sense of what they experience. Now, let's go back to your childhood. Have you ever bought an ice cream or an ice candy from a small store? And as you walk home under the hot sun, you probably noticed that it started to melt before you could even finish eating it. Did someone stop you and explain the science behind it? Probably not. Through your own observation and experience, you realize that heat causes ice cream to melt. That is individual constructivism, because you discover the idea on your own, not because someone directly told you. So we've learned that knowledge can be constructed through our own experiences. But let me ask you this. Is learning always done alone? Of course not. Many of the things we know today were learned because someone guided us, explained them, or worked with us. And that brings us to the second perspective of the constructivism, the social constructivism. What is social constructivism? It is based on the theory of Lev-Vygotsky. Unlike Piaget, Vygotsky believed that learning is primarily a social process. According to him, knowledge develops through communication, collaboration, and interaction with other people. Learners, meaning, construct meaning by discussing ideas, asking questions, sharing opinions, solving problems together, and learning from one another. Let me ask you another question. Have you ever learned a TikTok dance? At first, you probably didn't know all the steps. So what did you do? Maybe you watch your friends perform it, practice with them, ask them to teach you the difficult moves, and copy their movements until you finally got it right. Eventually, you learn the dance not because you figure it out entirely by yourself, but because you observe others, communicate with them, practice together, and receive feedback. That is a perfect example of social constructivism. Let's compare the two perspectives. Individual constructivism focuses on learning through personal exploration, discovery, and individual experiences. On the other hand, social constructivism emphasizes learning through communication, collaboration, and interaction with others. Although they differ in how learning takes place, they share one very important belief. Learners are active participants in learning. They do not simply receive knowledge from teacher. Instead, they construct knowledge through their experiences, their thinking, and their interaction with other people. And that is the very essence of constructivism. We've already explored the two views of constructivism. Next, let us examine the four characteristics that explains how learning happens according to constructivism. Let us begin by thinking about a common experience. Have you ever accidentally touched a hot pan while cooking? That must have hurt, right? After that happened, did your parents still have to remind you every day not to touch a hot pan? If yes, why not? Probably because you already knew that it was hot, because you experienced it. This brings us to our first characteristics. Learners construct understanding. According to the constructivism, learners are not empty vessels waiting to be filled with information. Instead, they are active thinkers who interpret new information based on what they already know and what they have experienced. Simply put, students don't learn only by listening to the teacher. They also learn through their own experiences, and those experiences help them understand and remember what they have learned. Now going back to our example, when you accidentally touch the hot pan, you immediately realize that it was hot and dangerous. No one had to remind you every day because your own experience taught you that lesson. That experience became your teacher. You construct your own understanding through what happened, and that's exactly what constructivism means. We build understanding through our own experiences. Our first characteristic shows that experience is a powerful teacher, but experience alone isn't enough. The next characteristics explains why what we already know also affects how we learn new things. Now, consider this situation. If I ask a grade 1 pupil to solve this equation, 2x plus 5 minus 11, do you think they can solve it? Probably not. Why do you think so? This brings us to our second characteristic: the new learning depends on current understanding. According to Constructivism, our background knowledge plays an important role because learners interpret new information based on what they already know. In simple words, every new lesson is connected to the lesson we've learned already. Our previous knowledge becomes the foundation for learning something new. And going back to our example, again, a grade 1 pupil cannot solve algebra because they haven't learned the basic mathematics skills yet. Before learning algebra, they first need to learn counting, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And because without those basic skills, algebra would be very difficult to understand. This reminds us that learning doesn't start from zero. Every new lesson builds upon our existing knowledge. At this point, we've seen that both experience and prior knowledge shape learning. But learning isn't always something we do alone. So interaction with other people also help us build understanding. Think about your own experience. Before a major examination, do you usually study alone or do you sometimes review with your classmates? Why do many students prepare studying together? This brings us to the third characteristic. The learning is facilitated by social interaction. In cognitivism view, learning becomes more effective when we interact with other people. That's why constructivists encourage creating a community of learners inside the classroom. In this type of classroom, students work together, exchange ideas, ask questions, and help one another solve problems. Instead of simply giving all the answers, the teacher serves as a facilitator who guides students throughout the learning process. Now, in our example, during a group review, one classmate may explain a lesson you don't understand, another may share an easier way to remember a concept, while someone else asks a question that helps everyone think more deeply. By communicating, collaborating, and learning from one another, everyone develops a better understanding of the lesson. So this shows that learning becomes richer through social interaction. We've seen how collaboration strengthens learning. The last characteristic focuses on another important idea. Learning becomes even more meaningful when we apply it in real-life situations. Since we're all future teachers, let's imagine this scenario. Which prepares you better for becoming a teacher? Reading about teaching in a book or actually conducting a teaching demonstration? Why do you think a teaching demonstration prepares you better? The fourth characteristics of the constructivism is the meaningful learning occurs within authentic learning tasks. Authentic learning tasks are activities that are similar to what we'll actually do in real life. For us as future teachers, conducting a teaching demonstration is an authentic learning task. And during a teaching demonstration, we don't simply memorize theories about teaching. We prepare a lesson plan, create instructional materials, teach in front of students, ask questions, and of course, manage the classroom. So these are the some responsibilities we will perform when we become licensed teachers. Because we're applying what we've learned in a real-life situation, our understanding becomes deeper and more meaningful. That's why authentic learning experiences are more effective than simply memorizing information. They allow us to learn by doing. So we've reached the end of the four characteristics of anti-constructivism. Before we conclude, let's briefly review the main ideas we've learned today. So, what have we learned today? Constructivism tells us that learning is an active process in which learners build their own understanding. First, learners construct understanding through their own experiences. Second, new learning depends on current understanding, meaning every new lesson builds on prior knowledge. Third, learning is facilitated by social interaction, where collaboration and discussion help deepen understanding. And finally, meaningful learning occurs within authentic learning tasks, where students apply what they have learned in real-life situations. As a future teachers, these four characteristics remind us that our role is not simply to deliver information. Instead, we should create meaningful learning experiences, encourage collaboration, connect new lessons to students' prior knowledge, and provide opportunities for them to apply what they have learned in real-life situations. Now that we've discussed how learning takes place, let's move on to the last part of our lesson, which is organizing knowledge. Have you ever wondered how your brain can remember thousands of things without getting confused? Imagine if every object, person, or idea was stored separately. It will be difficult to learn and remember anything, right? So instead, our brain organizes information into groups. This makes it easier to understand and recall. One way it does this is through what we call the concept. Let's begin with defining features. What is concept? A defining feature is a mental category that helps us always similar people, or something to object, ideas, to particular places or events together. To say, so even if this characteristic of something is not present, to categorize them as one. It will be because of this concept not considered as how concept help us organize in other words, it is the characteristics things that make something category what it is. If that characteristic is missing, when I say belongs to a different concept, what comes to your mind? Let's use a chair as an example. It will be a chair may be pencil, eraser, plastic, ruler, or metal, or crayon. It may be red, blue, black, or white. Those are the school supply. It may even have armrests or no armrests. Those items look but different. What is the one thing that every chair must have? You immediately group them together because they are all used in schools. Your brain didn't think of anything items separately. Instead, it recognized that they all belong to one category, which is the school supply. That is how concept help us organize the knowledge. Now that we know what a concept is, another question again comes to our mind. How does our brain know whether something belongs to a particular concept? The answer is by looking at its features or characteristics. And there are two kinds of features that help us identify concept. Let's begin with the defining features. A defining features is a characteristic that must always be present for something to belong to a particular concept. If that characteristic is missing, then it belongs to a different concept. In other words, it is the characteristics that make something what is it. For example, let us use a chair as an example. A chair may be made of wood, plastic, or metal. It may be red, blue, black, or white. It may even have armrests or no armrests. But what is one thing that even chair must have? Of course, if it doesn't have a seat, yes, a seat, then you can sit on it and it can no longer function as a chair. So having a seat is a defining feature because it is essential. So always remember that the defining features. These are the characteristics of a thing that must always be present to a thing. Because if there is no characteristics like this, then it will be in another concept. Now, not every characteristic is essential. Some characteristics are common, but they are not required. These are what we call correlational features. A correlational features is a characteristics that something usually has, but it is not necessary. So, unlike the defining feature, this correlational features is not necessary. It helps us recognize a concept more easily, but it does not determine what the concept is. So, think about a teacher. Many teachers wear an ID card inside the school. But what if a teacher accidentally forgets to wear an ID card one morning? Does that person stop being a teacher? Of course, no. They are still a teacher because wearing an ID card is only a common characteristics. It is not what makes someone a teacher. So wearing an ID card is a correlational features. So remember that it doesn't diminish someone's identity or something's identity if this characteristic is missing or not present. So that is the correlational features. So far, we've learned that concepts are identified by their features, but our brain does something else when it hears a familiar word. It immediately creates a mental image. So let's see how that works. We have a prototype. What is prototype? A prototype is the most typical or basic example of a concept that comes to our mind. It is usually the first example we think of because it is the one we are most familiar with. Okay, so I will highlight it. This is the first example that we think of when we heard something because it is perhaps one of the most familiar with us. So our brain uses prototypes to recognize this quickly. For example, if I simply say the word fruit, so what is the first fruit that comes to your mind? That is the prototype. Many people may immediately think of an apple or a banana because that is the fruits that is more familiar to them. That is a prototype, the first thing that you will think when you heard something. Why? Because these are common fruits that we often see in books, stores, and at home. That first mental image is what we called a prototype. However, our brain doesn't always depend on only one example. Sometimes, it also remembers many examples instead. This brings us to another way of organizing knowledge we called the exemplars. An exemplars refers to the many examples of a concept that are stored in our memory. So, instead of comparing something with only one typical example, our brain compares it with many examples we already know. This allows us to identify new things more accurately. For example, think about different kinds of bags. You already know backpacks, handbags, sling bags, tote bag, and travel bags. Now, imagine you see a new type of bag that you've never seen before. Even if it's unfamiliar, of course, you can still recognize it as a bag because your brain compares it with the many examples already stored in your memory. So, always remember that that process is what we call the exemplars. So far, we've talked about organizing individual concept, but our brain also organizes larger collection of information. These larger collection are called schemas. Okay, so we're already familiar with this schema because oftentimes we tackle it already. So, a schema, of course, is an organized collection of knowledge and experiences about a particular person, object, place, or event. You can think of it as a mental folder that stores everything you already know about something. Whenever you encounter new information, your brain connects it with the existing example. When you hear the word hospital, what immediately comes to your mind? Of course, the doctor, nurse, medicine, patients, and ambulances. That might be the common answer to my question. Notice that all of your answers are connected. Together, they form your hospital schema. So, always remember that, the schema, this is formed when you encounter new information, and then this information, your brain will connect it to your existing knowledge. Because of your schema, you already know what to expect when someone mentions a hospital. Now, one of the special kind of schema help us understand not just information but also the order in which events usually happen, and this is called a script. A script is a type of schema that stores the usual sequence of events in a familiar situation. It helps us predict what normally happens first, next, and last. Script guide our behavior in everyday situation. So it's also like the script that we are reading whenever we have this role play that always guide at us with what are the sequence or the things that next to happen. So for example, think about your daily routine before coming to school. So what usually happens first? Of course, you wake up. After you wake up, you take a bath. And after that, of course, you eat breakfast, wear your uniform, and go to school. Exactly, that is the sequence. You already know the order because you've experienced it many times. That is the script. That familiar sequence is your school script. To summarize, our brain organizes knowledge in different ways to help us understand the words. Concepts help us group similar things together. Meanwhile, defining features tell us what something must have. Correlational features tell us what something usually has. Prototypes are the most typical example that first come to our mind. Exemplars are the many examples stored in our memory. Schemas organize everything we know about a person, place, object, or event. Scripts help us remember the usual sequence of events in familiar situations. And as a future teachers, understanding how knowledge is organized is important because it helps us design lessons that connect new ideas to what learners already know. When students can organize information into concepts, schemas, and script, learning becomes more meaningful, easier to remember, and easier to apply in real-life situations.